If the season's about growth and you want growth, Walker Kessler last night against the Sacramento Kings is the epitome of growth. It's next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as on YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning into the program. All right, what do we got today on the program? We are going to do points gained to close the day, which is our offensive metric on evaluating offensive players. And we're going to try to see if points gains can tell us what's possibly going on in Detroit, who's won 8 straight and beat Boston by 20 last night. Doug Christie's pregame press conference had 2 incredibly interesting comments, one up for debate, one insightful, particularly to that of Keyonte George, and we'll talk about that. But we're starting with Walker Kessler's performance last night against the Sacramento Kings. To the everydayers out there, you're the best. Thank you so much for bringing it every single day here to Locked On. Thank you for making us who we are. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if you first $5 bet wins. Walker Kessler last night, 25 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 10 of 10 shooting, only ever done, as Ben Anderson found, of the Zone and KSL, found that it has only been done by Wilt Chamberlain and Nikola Jokic. Pretty good company. Not sure I think Walker's Nikola Jokic or Wilt Chamberlain, but I'm pretty excited that he just accomplished that. Here's why this is growth, for 2 reasons. If you go look in the last 3 years, what Walker's done against the Sacramento Kings, it's pretty feckless, okay? And when you look at what Domantas Sabonis has done in the last 3 years against us, he's annihilated us. So let's just start with that. Walker, in the last game against Sacramento, we did lose by 44, 8 points, 14 rebounds, perfectly fine day, just not a lot to it. For that, 4 points, 8 rebounds, 6 points, 8 rebounds, 2 points, 3 rebounds, 8 and 8. He had a monster game against the Kings in March of 2023, and I'd have to go back and look and see whether Sabonis actually played that day. He had 35 in that game. He went 14 of 16. It's one of his biggest games since Sabonis did play. So he killed Sabonis in March of 2025. There's some reasons why this is a pretty good matchup, actually, for Walker. But he has to take advantage of it. The pretty good matchup part is Sacramento is last in the NBA in pick and roll defense. Sabonis is not a rim defender. And so when they play pick and roll, they have Sabonis usually show, and then smaller guys are supposed to come over and rotate over to try to deal with it. And in turn, the roll man gets free. They're 9th worst team in the league guarding the roll man. And the corner 3 should be open as well. And that's because Sabonis is generally kind of an inadequate defensive player because of his lack of size. As good as he is at all sorts of other things, that's not his strength. Well, Walker did that last night plus some and completely dominated for the Jazz and kept them in a game. Sacramento tries to get out to the corner 3, but they're 27th in the league in allowing corner 3s, 11%. The Jazz took 19 corner 3s last night, many of those off Walker gives. So you want the growth. We're watching growth this year. We're talking about our players. We're trying not to stamp them early, all the same talking points. You want the growth. One, physically able to handle Domantas Sabonis, which I'm not sure he could do. He had one good game, but he had really just generally not been able to do. Most guys can't. 2, and I talked to Will Hardy about this before the game, learning how to play as hard as Domantas Sabonis. I think there's something, Will's point was that you learn to play hard in the NBA because trying to do anything and everything is so hard. And I think there's something that will, like Domantas Sabonis plays harder than anyone else in the league, and you have to figure out how you're going to deal with that. And so I think that he has learned how to deal with that. So first, the physical lower body strength. And Walker post-game last night talked about how lower body and core strength is far more important than upper body strength in the NBA. And that he's added that lower body and core strength. This is what you learn in between years 2 and 3, not between years 1 and 2. You try in year 1 and 2 to do everything. Year 2 and 3, you zero in. He's added that lower body strength, so he can now physically handle that. The other one is just the reps and the reads and the time. Walker's reads last night were terrific. Walker would catch on the mid-roll. So what they do is they pick and roll and they show 2 guys. Now Walker's going to catch it usually earlier than usual. And that used to be a little bit of a disaster if Walker caught it between 10 and 15 feet. And now Walker's making the right read that he either goes to the basket, had a beautiful left-hand finish on a play, or 2, that he kicks it out to the corner for a corner 3. And he did that fabulously. Or the new one that he's added into the mix is the lob that he hit KJ Martin on. Will Hardy, before the game, talked about his most favorite parts of Walker's development, and that was some of the big lobs that we've seen out of him from the last few games, the Lowry, KJ Martin plays, that he just thinks that Walker would have never looked at those plays ever before. The other one to me in this, and we've talked about, we're talking about our 7 young guys a lot every single day on this program. That's what matters, that and Cooper Flagg, is when you look at Walker's other great games so far. His other games that jump out to me as being particularly good recently. Phoenix, 19 points, 22 rebounds. Yeah, was against Mason Plumlee and Nick Richards. Good. Walker should be better than them. The 15-point, 18 rebound game against Golden State, that was largely against Trace Jackson. He should be better than them. I don't remember who the Pelicans had at center, but my memory is that Misi was out and somebody else was out, and they ended up playing somebody who wasn't. Yeah, Daniel Tice played 37 minutes at center, and Walker dominated him to 19 points and 13 rebounds. And certainly some of this is defensive scheme. It's not always direct matchup. But my point is that the first step of growth I saw Walker make this year is that when Walker had a matchup, remember, like 2 years ago, Walker gets dominated by Nick Claxton to end the season. It was like Walker had this unbelievable rookie year that was so great, and everybody was excited, rightfully so. But there was also these like moments where you like kind of dug into it a little bit, and you're like, oh gosh. Like if I remember correctly, we played Brooklyn late in the year that year, and it might have been Walker's last game of the year, and Nick Claxton went off and just outplayed Walker. And I don't know if he went off for like 20 and 10, but it was clear he outplayed Walker. It was like, oh. Well, so this year when you're playing guys who, if we just look at them on paper, you're like, okay, Walker versus Daniel Tice. Walker should be way better. And he killed him. Walker versus Jackson Hayes should be way better. Walker killed him. Walker versus Mason Plumlee should be way better. Killed him. Like that's been happening all year. And that's great. And that's a huge step. Win the matchups you're supposed to match. Okay, Walker versus Domantas Sabonis. I didn't think Walker would win that. I don't expect Walker to dominate that one. Walker versus Alfred Şengün. Yeah, maybe I do a little bit, but the 8 offensive rebounds against them the other night, that was pretty dominant. The 19 rebounds against OKC was pretty good. Like, this is the other one. Now he's getting a bunch of days off in between, but he's also just performing night in and night out right now. So the areas of growth for Walker Kessler, the physical strength that he built in the offseason, which, if we're thinking about our other young players, can only happen over time. Most players lose 10 pounds in their rookie season. Like I was here listening to Will Hardy talk about Cody Williams' weight work. Yeah, if he's maintaining weight, that's great. Most guys lose weight in their rookie season. So physical strength. Walker talked about post-game about Sabonis, the mental strength, the mental game of knowing that you're going to have to go up against him physically pounding into your chest and trying to get into your body the whole time. And that then you have to run to make him fatigue him and outrun him because you're faster than him. So that's just the experience of learning how to play a guy, but also mentally taking the approach to it. And then the ability mentally to play night in and night out, which is also physical. And then the physical ability to start making the right reads. When do I go to the basket? When do I, and the physical ability to actually finishing those and going 10 for 10. He's made 15 straight shots, by the way. He's made 24 of his last 26 shots. It's terrific to see. It's the highlight of the season. And last night, it was on full display for Walker Kessler. Every night in the NBA, we are fortunate enough. We meet with the head coach at 5:15 of a 7 o'clock start, and we meet with the visiting coach at 5:30. And it's pretty fascinating. It's truly my favorite part of the job. And I take it very seriously, like with the questions I ask and the preparation and all those things. And last night, Doug Christie gave me 2 answers that were so interesting that I think relate to the Utah Jazz in different ways. And we'll talk about them next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you in part by our friends over at Robinhood. Robinhood gives you the chance to have the life of the elite, or at least the treatment of the elite. With Robinhood Gold, you now get the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions get boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and your non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national averages. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up for Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate super subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from match. Must keep funds in the IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times national average account interest claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Today's show is also brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai. Located at 4646 South State Street, also in Logan. And in Linden, it's Murdoch Hyundai. Stop by, get the best you can get from Murdoch Hyundai. Enjoy the Santa Fe, the Kona, enjoy the Tucson, whatever it might be that you're looking for in the market. And if you're looking for that VIP meet, if you're looking for a Hyundai, please email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so we can give you the VIP meeting that you deserve as a locked on every day. Murdoch Hyundai, 4646 South State Street, Logan, and in Linden. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day, free and available on all podcasting apps. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Jazz daily newsletter, please do so. It is the ultimate one-stop NBA newsletter. We're super proud of it. You'll get your Locked On Jazz today. You get Empty the Noggin, exclusive. Then you get today's Thursday, you get Mike Schreier's deep dive into the NBA, maybe talking about Detroit. Who knows? I don't know what he's talking about, but I would think maybe Detroit, who's won 8 in a row. And then you get Josh Lloyd's fantasy basketball, plus links to all the most important stories and the best written stories in and outside of Locked On. We just want to make sure you get everything you need as an NBA fan. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and sign up for your daily newsletter. It's free. We're always free. All right. Doug Christie. So the first one with Doug Christie was talking about Malik Monk. And Malik Monk has really been a scorer his whole career. And now Malik Monk is playing point guard because of the fact that Sacramento needs him to do that. And Monk is shooting 39% from the field and 28% from 3 since he became the point guard. And Charlotte tried him as a point guard as well. And he's not really a point guard. This is where the parallel to Keyonte George really comes into play right away. Is here's this guy who was drafted fairly early out of Monk played a year at Kentucky. He was the 11th pick of the draft in 2017, pick before Donovan Mitchell. Charlotte will never forgive anyone for that. And he's kind of bounded about playing in trying to figure it out. Didn't shoot well for his first two or 3 years. After 4 years, Charlotte quits on him, despite the fact he had a pretty good year last year. He goes to the Lakers for a year, and then he signs in Sacramento, and now he's a pretty bona fide NBA player who's doing all sorts of good things. What's really interesting to me about this is Monk now suddenly having to play point guard, which he's not, and he's not shooting the ball well, and he doesn't look comfortable. He didn't look particularly good last night. Well, Doug Christie talked about how a scorer scores a bucket, comes back the other way, doesn't want the ball in his hands. He wants to get, like Steph Curry, get set up to get the ball in his hands, to come to the ball. or have the ball be made, he gets off a pick, comes and gets it, catches the momentum in his rhythm and going. Whereas for most guys, if you bring the ball up the floor, now the defense is zeroing in on you. You're at the top of the floor. All 10 eyes are on you, and you don't have anywhere near that same kind of freedom or luxury on how you're going to do things. And if you look at back at Monk, his rookie year, he plays 58% of the time as point guard, and then they move him off the ball, and he begins to have success, and now he's back to playing 50% of his time as point guard. It immediately made me think of Keyonte. That we're seeing Keyonte play better, more efficient basketball when he's off the ball. And maybe it's all a rhythm thing. Keyonte's not comfortable bringing the ball up the floor with the pressure on him and all that. It's also exhausting. Doug Christie talked about the mental exercise of it and worrying about it. And the defense is able to zero in on you. But when Key can go play out of the corner or out of a wing and get secondary actions on the second side, he does seem to be much more enlivened, in rhythm, on fire, get the second action, pick and roll. It's a lot of the same actions. It's just coming at you in a different fashion. So it just, I thought, was worth kind of noting. We've talked about the Keyonte shooting percentage is way better when he's on the floor with Isaiah Collier, who's really the only guy in this roster that is a point guard. And we're watching Key get some more of that experience. And it's not, he had a bad night against Portland, I think it was, shooting. So it's not as though this is perfect and solves every single night's items with him. But I do think we're seeing a little bit of a difference there, and we're seeing him play it in a manner. He's still, according to Basketball Reference, playing 99% of his possessions as the point guard. I think it's changed a little bit in that regard. But it was just kind of rung to me when I heard Doug Christie talk about an offensive player would rather come off the ball to get their next shot when they're hot. And then that there are just very few guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Luka Doncic or those types who can bring the ball up, have the defense, all 10 eyes of the defense stare at them, and then feel as though they know what they, how they can react next. And I think that's an interesting thought. Keyonte is now shooting 5 percentage points better when he's on the floor with Isaiah Collier. His effective field goal percentage is 53%, which is right on league average. And when Keyonte's on the floor without Isaiah Collier, it's 48%. The other one that Doug Christie was really interesting about was layered actions. And I don't know what I think on this one, and I'm not sure that I totally even saw this last night, but I asked him about where he wants to be in the handoff game, because Sacramento's run some of the most handoffs ever, and then they've diminished, and it was a very Mike Brown signature thing, and the offense had actually gotten worse. And Mike Brown, when I asked him about it this year, his answer was a little bit that teams had begun to react and understand what they were doing, and so therefore it did do them as good a job to run as many handoffs as before because teams were getting used to it. I actually think it's that DeMar DeRozan arrived and kind of disturbed their whole offense, but that's that's relevant, but that's a side note. What he was talking about was we're going to do a handoff. It's got to be with a purpose. I don't want just actions for action's sake to start. A few years ago, Quinn Snyder, and I think Rick Carlisle is my memory, started this kind of game in the NBA where there was a bunch of false action prior to the primary action. So get the defense moving, get them shifting, get them altered, move it. Maybe they make a switch or two. Maybe you can get a matchup change you want, and then get into your pick and roll or your pin down or your wide action or whatever it might be. That you run some false action first. And you know that you're running the false action, and eventually you're ending up with Donovan off Rudy, Mike Conley off Rudy. That's kind of what we were doing. Quinn had two theories behind this. One was he did want to have the defense on the move and not set and not stationary. Ironically enough, by the end, we became pretty stagnant with guys just sitting in the corner. The second one was they wanted everyone to touch the ball. He believed that if everyone touches the ball, you end up with more defensive engagement in the team and feeling of it that everyone needed to touch the ball. Doug Christie's kind of saying, we'll get into actions faster this way, and if it doesn't work, then we can run more of those if we run a pick and roll and it doesn't work, then we can run another pick and roll at another moment and get into it, and we're better off that way. Christie's been the head coach now for 2 months, and I was trying to figure out how I could figure out whether or not whether this, whether or not I could figure out like a way to decipher whether or not he's really done that. And I looked at how many passes Sacramento throws per game and whether that number was wildly different after listening to him. So Golden State throws the most passes at 347 since he's taken over, but Sacramento's at 20th at 295. Passes don't actually have any indicator of whether your offense is good or not. Like Cleveland's 25th in the league in passing and setting the record for most offensive possessions. Memphis is playing this wide open new style and doesn't pass the basketball very much. Golden State and Phoenix pass it the most, and then Phoenix runs the most isolation because Bud runs a bunch of false action first. So it's just an interesting perspective, really, of just kind of, we're talking basketball, we're all basketball fans here, of whether you run false action first. The Jazz run, the quickest stuff the Jazz run is just the early pin downs for Lowry off ball screens, and they just get right into it. But the Jazz run some false action to get things moving and get the ball changing and little touch actions at the top, just to try to get the defense moving. I think I'm a believer in that. Mark Daigneault was really interesting because they run a bunch of action off-ball movement before isolations for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander so that the off-ball defenders, and this is kind of back to the first point of what Doug Christie was talking about. When Doug Christie talked about there just aren't that many guys you can just bring with all 10 eyes on the defense. Well, what Mark Daigneault's doing is moving guys around before Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's isolations so that not all 10 eyes are on him. They're moving, they're communicating, they're working on those kind of things. And so therefore, you don't have all 10 eyes and you're not able to defend as well when Shai suddenly gets downhill on you. So super interesting. Hope you like that. I like to bring those things into the kind of conversation. But I do think it might explain why someone like Keyonte, just with the world coming at him so fast for the first 18 months, is now having more success and I think has better prospects of success as a shooting guard and playing off the ball, and where it's just very hard to play point guard. I think we're seeing Isaiah Collier wear down right now a little bit. He has not been quite as sharp the last 2 games, so he made some outside shots last night, which was great. And boy, Kyle Filipowski got a tutorial from Jonas Valanciunas on how to be bullied. But Kyle looked like he literally was a fourth grader going up against a high school senior last night. It was crazy. Valanciunas is mammoth. I talked to Jonas before the game. He is mammoth. All right. Points Gained is our exclusive offensive ranking system that gives you the ways a player's offensive efficiency and his ability to get shots off and ranks who's the most impactful offensive players in the NBA and negative offensive players. And we're going to talk about it next. Who and why are the Detroit Pistons won 8 in a row? Is that possible that we can find it in Points Gained? We'll look next on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by my friends over at Intercap Lending. Steve Carter is our own personal loan officer at Intercap. Yesterday, I got to send somebody up with Steve, and it was so exciting. I love it when someone emails me and says, hey, and this was a great email. This email totally fired me up. I don't want to say who it's from. I'm not sure that's his business, but he said, hey, for the last couple of years, I've had a goal to fix everything with my credit and income to be able to build a house, and the day has finally come. So I'm wondering if you could help me out with Steve Carter in Intercap Lending. Boom! Love that. Steve Carter is our own personal loan officer at Intercap. Steve is rave reviews, the best customer service you ever could imagine. Intercap is a mortgage company that's shaking things up by making home loans accessible, straightforward, and personal. Whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or a veteran exploring options, Intercap is there to guide you. They've got something for everyone, from FHA loans for first-timers, VA loans for veterans, USDA loans for those buying in rural areas. Intercap can help you in and outside of the state of Utah. So feel free to get your dream home with Intercap Lending. Steve Carter is the best customer service you can imagine. Malcolm says amazingly knowledgeable, helpful, friendly, went way above and beyond. That's the essence of Steve Carter. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com so that we can get you your Intercap Lending VIP treatment that you deserve. It is all over at Intercap Lending. Today's show is also brought to you by longtime Locked On sponsor and good friend, FanDuel. FanDuel bringing you all the action in-game pregame, however you might want to do it. Here's the latest with FanDuel for you. If you win a $5 bet, you end up getting yourself a $150 in bonus bets. So get the FanDuel app and take advantage of all the fun and excitement that takes place in live betting throughout the game. Even if you miss the opening tip, you can bet the fourth quarter comeback or stay in the action. Bigger payout, combine your live bets and save game parlay. It's all exciting and fun and makes every moment of the game more exciting. Backing your team on a late game rally, picking a player to hit a clutch three, whatever it might be, the app's easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new customers, FanDuel customers, get $150 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your one shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA and official sportsbook of Locked On. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen. All right, points gained is our offensive metric, exclusive to Locked On, that ranks NBA players. It looks at their efficiency and their two skills, their offensive efficiency and their ability to get shots off, because actually that's super important. Let me see if I can share the screen for those of you that are on YouTube. Okay. Right now, the league, usually we have 3 guys that are in 3 and about 10 guys that are over 2. And right now, we only have 2 guys in the entire NBA whose nightly points gained, that's points above average. So what this means is that Nikola Jokic uses about 22 scoring opportunities a night. And in those 22 scoring opportunities, he scores 4 points more than an average player would in those 22 scoring opportunities. That's a lot. 4 is really, really high. The next closest is 3.3 in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the next is Jared Allen at 2.8. Domantas Sabonis at 2.7. Kevin Durant at 2.7. Karl Anthony Towns, 2.5. Daniel Gafford, 2.4. Giannis, 2.4. Zach LaVine, 2.3. Norman Powell, monster year, 2.3. Should have been an all-star. Cam Johnson, 2.2. Jalen Duren, 2.1. And Walker Kessler, now up in the top. Obviously, like centers who can dunk. Evan Mobley at 2.0. Christian Brown, 1.9. Dame Lillard having a great year at 30, whatever years old, 1.8. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 players above 2. If you kind of look back at last year, we had 2 players above 3 and about 10 players, same 10, 11, 12 players over 2. So this is evening out as you expect. Embiid at 3.5 last year, Giannis at 3.9. Jokic last year was a 2.8. In the 2022-23 season, Jokic was a 4.3. And this year, Jokic is a 4.0. So he is back at monster MVP level. I would go with him as the MVP over Shai right now, frankly, on the 2. It's also interesting, by the way, is neither of them are high-volume three-point shooters. For all the 3 high-volume three-point shooters are LaVine, Powell, and Cameron Johnson. Who is the least efficient offensive player and having the biggest negative impact on their team with their play? And this has to do, you have to find guys. Paolo Banchero for the year is minus 2.9. Pretty interesting when you talk about Orlando and they talk about lack of shooting. It's also because Banchero is wildly. DeJounte Murray minus 2.8, but out for the year. Kyle Kuzma minus 2.5 in Milwaukee. Alex Sarr, the rookie, minus 2.3. Killian Hayes is always on this list at this point. He's in Brooklyn now. Keon Johnson's always been on this list. That's why he bounces around. Some rookies, Tajon Salon, Kevin Porter bounced around. Jordan Hawkins, New Orleans, minus 1.7. Stephen Castle, minus 1.7. Isaiah Collier, minus 1.7. Bogdan Bogdanovic, minus 1.7. Scotty Barnes, that's a little disturbing, minus 1.7. LaMelo Ball, for all the talk, minus 1.6. Cody Williams, minus 1.6. Rookies are always in this list. All right. Why is Detroit on fire? Well, let's look at Detroit for the season. My book on how teams win, by the way, is what you do is you get a few players that are above average, and then from there, if you can get everybody else to be on average or above, you'll win. That's a championship model. Have they done that? Jalen Duren's their center getting 2.1. Malik at 0.7. Paul Reed, Asur Thompson, all average. Jaden Ivey out average. Tobias Harris, minus 0.7. Simone, minus 0.6. Cade, for all his greatness, minus 0.7. So for the season, my answer here would be no. They have not really done that. But let's go to the last 10 games. I have not looked at this before. Let's go to the last 10 games and check and see. Now, all of a sudden, you have Malik. They've won 8 in a row. They beat Boston by 20. Malik Beasley's on fire at a 3.0. Jalen Duren, 2.9. Tobias Harris, 2.0. Asur Thompson, 1.8. Isaiah Stewart, 1.0. Cade Cunningham, 1.0. Well, this begins to match the model. The guys that are playing for them right now, if we look at their minutes played, almost all of them, Tim Hardaway's never efficient, is minus 0.7. Simone's getting some time. He's not. And Dennis Schroeder, again, and player who's just never efficient. It does not matter if you switch teams if you're an inefficient player, by the way. I know that everyone wants to believe that. If you're inefficient, you're inefficient. So Detroit, to some extent, what they have is a bunch of guys that are super hot. Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, and some of that taking place. And they generally are having guys use possessions that are above league average. All right, let's look at the last 10 games. Nikola Jokic is on fire to 4.7. LeBron James is at 3.9 over the last 10 games. And JJ Redick yesterday talked about he's playing all league defense. Incredible. Bradley Beal, 3.8, and Phoenix still is not winning. Murray, 3.8. Durant, 3.6. Shea, 3.1. Malik Beasley there. Derek White of Boston's on fire. Rudy hasn't played much. Jalen Duren at 2.9. Giannis on fire, 2.6. Wiggins in Oklahoma City at 2.6. That's Aaron Wiggins. Jared Allen. Josh Giddey playing efficiently. He does not usually do that. Zion Williamson warming up. Players are the coldest players in the NBA with the largest negative impact over the last 10 games. This is a little bit post All-Star break and beyond. Alex Sarr, minus 4.9. Russell Westbrook's back to his usual at minus 3.9. LaMelo Ball, minus 3.6. There's Taylor Horton-Tucker. Luka Doncic, minus 3.1. Interesting. Keon Johnson. D'Angelo Russell, minus 3.0. DeJounte Murray we have from the past. Malik Monk, who we just talked about earlier, minus 2.8. Bogdan Bogdanovic, since the trade, minus 2.8. Paolo Banchero, minus 2.7. Rookie Rob Dillingham. Scotty Barnes. All right, let's take a look at the Jazz for the season, and then we'll wrap this baby up. 2 weeks ago, we talked about it. Lowry just having a considerable slip. That is still true. Now not playing as much. Walker, 2.1. John Collins, 1.7. KJ Martin, 0.9. Colin Sexton, 0.8. Kyle Filipowski, 0.3. Bryce Sensabaugh, 0.2. Lowry Markkanen, dead even average. Jordan Clarkson, minus 0.7. I do not think this counts last night, which could just send it into a different. Keyonte at minus 0.9, which is much better than last year. Cody, Isaiah, and Taylor. And if we look at the last 10 games for the Utah Jazz, this will be interesting to see if Key who's going to line a great deal more since moving off the ball also, whether he suddenly becomes more efficient on this. Walker's 2.1. Kyle Filipowski, 2.1. That's when you're hitting your threes. It's pretty great. Jaden Springer, Jordan Clarkson, 0.5. Keyonte, 0.5. That's fabulous. Last 10 games for Keyonte is going to line 12% of his possessions. 43% of them are threes, using 20 scoring opportunities a game. And these aren't outrageous numbers. 43, 38. Like, he can do this. There's no reason not. And he's at 0.5. This is super encouraging for who Keyonte George is. John Collins, 0.5. Cody, minus 0.4 is better. Lowry, minus 0.8. Sensabaugh, minus 1.2. Colin was struggling before he got Isaiah, minus 1.8. And Svi. That is your points gained today. That is your edition of Locked On Jazz. Thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that. For those of you that are on video, follow me on all the socials, DLock09. Sign up for our newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com. Subscribe and follow the program and hit the bell button. Thank you very much. 5 stars are appreciated if you have the time. Now we send you the first ever national 24/7 channel, Locked On NBA. If you're on audio, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Have a good one.